SpaceX's Starship is predestined for great things. After taking NASA's astronauts to the moon, Elon Musk will use it to transfer his colonizers to Mars. Nonetheless, not a single thing can happen, except if the Starship is indicated and demonstrated as ready. This is the main reason why SpaceX is rushing to send the Starship prototype on its first orbital mission. In today's video, we will inspect and investigate the Starship prototype S20 preparedness for its first flight. Before we go any further with this video, we would like to inform you that there is a possibility to get more than $2,800. What you need to do is register on these two exchanges, Bybit or Femex. If you are interested, you have the links in the description of this video. SpaceX has followed through countless of tests of its Starship prototypes to different degrees of success. The last and crucial test was on prototype SN15, and certified as a success as the Starship managed to land as expected without blowing up. The following big test will be even more challenging and difficult on the Starship as it's going to reach orbit. The S20 prototype will be mounted on the Extreme Heavy Booster 4 for the flight. One of the requests and demands of the S20 is how it will actually handle the heat generated when it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Considering the fact that all former tests have been a suborbital, this is the very first time SpaceX is testing that part of its design. Circa 3 minutes into the flight, the upper stage will separate from the lower stage and continue into orbit before it's making its way back to Earth. This is the closest SpaceX can get to the real-world performance of the Starship. SpaceX is aware of the risk involved in the Starship returning from space travel and has taken steps to protect it. Guarding and shielding the S20 prototype are the black hexagonal tiles that cover the part of the hulking steel structure that will face the heat. The ceramic tiles serve a crucial purpose, shielding the spacecraft from blazing temperatures during re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Starship is managed to bring about a belly flop maneuver to slow its descent, meaning that much of its side will need to be covered in the black tiles. They are the size of a dinner plate and are made from ceramic and are attached by hand to the surface of the S20 prototype. 3 pins or studs hold each tile, and pins are welded onto the steel body of the Starship directly. Implanting inside each tile, there is a small metal plate. A tile is lined and pressed up against each set, making them lock in place. SpaceX's method is uncomplicated and simple when compared to some other spacecraft that have used heat-resistant tiles like the Space Shuttle and Russian Buran. SpaceX is aware of how fragile those tiles actually are because the first time the upper and lower stages were stacked, some of the 15,000 tiles broke or moved. Workers carefully secured and fixed each affected tile by hand using a set of colors to denote the actions to be taken on each tile. Either way, SpaceX ran into some serious issues one more time with the tiles, and this time during a venting test. Even before SpaceX could entirely clear its workers off the launch pad, the tiles began to fly off during a short test of high-pressure cold gas maneuvering thrusters. From photos that were posted on social networks, the areas throughout the cone of the ship were bare of tiles. Elon Musk also confirmed the accident and trouble in reply to the tweet. He described a headed tank vent knocked off what he called a few tiles. That can be very effortlessly confirmed from the pictures that are all over the internet. Seemingly, the event didn't even affect the SpaceX's plan, and fixing it does not even need an overhauling of the Starship's design. Several days after the accident of the flying tiles, SpaceX carried out a cryogenic test on the S20 prototype. The effort and movement were required to track how the prototype would act when loaded with liquid fuel. Instead of fuel, SpaceX loaded the prototype with hundreds of tons of liquid nitrogen. This is where attention was supposed to be paid to the tiles to see how they dealt with. This is because when liquid nitrogen is loaded onto the tanks, the freezing temperature makes the steel contract, which could cause the tiles to press against one another and more likely to break or crack. When the cooled liquid nitrogen touches the side of the prototype, which are at ambient temperatures, will boil off into a gas. That compared to the supercool temperature of the liquid nitrogen or fuel, the ambient temperature of the steel body and plumbing will be white hot. That is the reason why the liquid nitrogen boils. The venting of gas is much needed to maintain the pressure inside the tank in the suitable range. If this doesn't occur, it could be disastrous. Nonetheless, Musk declared on Twitter that it went well on the first try. So, SpaceX can knock off cryogenic testing as the S20 marches towards the orbital flight. The S-20 prototype will fly with 6 Raptor engines being attached, a mixture of sea level and vacuum variant when the day comes. SpaceX will carry out static fire tests. This could be done slowly and cautiously, but that depends on if SpaceX wants to carry out multiple fire tests. One factor that might come into play is the launch area. If the launch mount and pad are not equipped for orbital launches, SpaceX might not be able to test all 6 Raptor engines together. Getting ready for this, SpaceX has moved in several Raptor engines to the launch area. At the minimum, there is 1 sea-level variant and 1 vacuum variant in this delivery. There is a very good chance of static fire tests taking place soon. To date, SpaceX has never fired more than 3 Raptor engines on a prototype, so when that happens on the S-20, it will definitely be a milestone. While on this topic, it will be the first time SpaceX has fired both sea-level and vacuum types of Raptors on the same prototype. Prototype S-20 will be a gigantic moment for SpaceX in its Starship development and evolution. With that being the case, SpaceX is already looking beyond the S-20, as it is already working on prototype S-21 and Extra Heavy Booster 5. Evidently, based on lessons learned, SpaceX is proceeding towards and approaching the new prototypes differently. For instance, some tasks are going simultaneously, like the heat-resistant tiles that SpaceX during the S-20 development. Workers are working on them while the different segments are assembled similarly to the Booster 5 prototype. SpaceX is doing the plumbing, wiring, and avionics as it is assembling. This has hastened and quickened the pace of development so much that the new prototype could catch up with S-20 and Booster 4. If that by any chance occurs, SpaceX will have 2 orbit-worthy pairs of prototypes and may have to decide which one needs to be used for the test. The decision is not in the near future, as all signs and indicators show that orbital flight tests will no longer occur and happen this year. Due to detains and holds up from the FAA in approving SpaceX's permits, we could be looking at a 2022 orbital flight. Elon Musk is even pleading with his fans and followers on Twitter to display and manifest their support by responding to the FAA's request for public comments. What results and consequences this will have on NASA's timetable for its mission to the Moon, where it plans to use the Starship to land its astronauts, remains to be seen. But it seems NASA is fighting its own battle as well, since it is still working on the uniforms for its astronauts. Let us know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this orbital test flight.